Oh, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you. Can you all hear Colin? Okay.
Perfect. All right. Hey, thanks everybody on Zoom, and thanks everybody in the office there in Apple Valley. Great to have you on our weekly Wednesday mortgage training. If you haven't been in part of one of these before, welcome. We try and cover a lot of pertinent material without getting too deep in the weeds, so that you've got good information that you can take to either your buyers or sellers should certain circumstances come up that pertain to financing. I've wanted to do this for a while in terms of having an appraiser that is actually either on Zoom or, in front of us, right? I mean, there's so little interaction really that we get with appraisers, and a lot of that is legally determined, understandably so. But to be able to do a live Q&A with an appraiser and talk about things like comps and various things that go into an appraised value that obviously affects almost every single one of our deals, with the exception of cash deals and then appraisal waivers. So I want to introduce to you Kyle Engdahl. I've known Kyle for a few years now. He's been an appraiser for 5 years, and recently broke off and started his own appraisal company, which is out of Edina. It's called Mill City Appraisals. You can find him in the preferred vendor list on PHT Agent Resources. So if you have a need for private appraisals, or if you just want to maybe continue this conversation or ask him some particular questions, all of his contact information is there for all the agents. And he does all sorts of residential appraisals, duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, hobby farms, townhomes, acreage, raw land, even complex properties that are over $1 million, all that stuff. So I won't talk too long. I'm going to open it up. Kyle, welcome. Let's talk appraisals.
Yeah, thank you, Colin. Thanks everybody for having me. I appreciate it. I think Colin kind of touched on something that we don't have a lot of interaction. We're kind of in our own little silos. So no, I appreciate being able to kind of go over stuff with you guys. And I was sent a few questions. So I'll kind of touch on those in a little bit, but just kind of want to go over what the process looks like on my end of stuff. Kind of what the appraisal process looks like. I'll try not to get too detailed or too boring for everybody, but I also try to do this with homeowners when I go through a home, kind of at the end of it, just because again, most people don't interact with us too much. So yeah, what does it look like? Appraisal comes through, I go out to the property. My inspection involves walking through the home, taking pictures, notes, measurements of everything. It's a pretty easy process. The bulk of the work is on the back end of things. In terms of finding comparables, how that process works, I try to find homes that are most similar to the ones that I'm working on. So I try to match up everything I can in terms of style, square footage, bedroom, bathroom count, kind of overall condition of things, special features that I pick up on. So, if I'm looking at a Rambler, I'm trying to find other Ramblers. If I'm looking at a 850 square foot Rambler in Richfield, I'm not going to find some big old 2-story in Edina or things like that. Try to compare apples to apples the best you can. We are given parameters that we work within. So homes within 1 mile of the subject, homes that have closed within the past 12 months. Ideally, it's a lot sooner than that. And we can kind of get into what that looks like, if I have to pull comps that are a lot further back or, further back than say 3. Ideally, they're within the past 3 to 6 months, over 6 months, especially in changing markets. An argument can be made that a home a year old isn't quite as good of a comparable as a home that's sold, 2 months ago or a couple weeks ago, something like that. So yeah, try to match up, like I said, try to match up everything I can. And it kind of boils down to most timely, most proximate, most similar, and then I adjust for differences. So what do I got? I got a few kind of notes here. So how do I come up with adjustments? So there's 2 processes, there's a couple processes to find, to determine adjustments. The most common and kind of most tried and true method is paired sales analysis. So it gets very convoluted very quickly, and there's a lot of gray area in the appraisal process. But paired sales analysis is essentially you have 2 identical homes selling. let's just for theory's sake, which obviously this doesn't happen very often in real life, but you have two identical model match homes right next to each other. They sold within a week apart of each other. Everything is the same. One house has a deck, one house does not have a deck. The simplest example of that is what that difference is in price is. Well, that's how much contributory value the deck adds. That's like the very basic, most easiest example there is. Obviously, in real life, that is so far out the window. So that's one aspect. Linear regression analysis is another way to determine contributory value. That gets way too into the weeds, and I'm not qualified to teach statistics, so I'll let YouTube kind of demonstrate what linear regression analysis looks like. But again, you're looking at it's kind of a statistical modeling take on it. And then oftentimes how adjustments get determined is more qualitative. So, a home that has a remodeled kitchen, if you don't have any other homes that have remodeled kitchens, you're forced to use a home that's kind of beat up in worse condition. You try to look at what's involved in that kitchen remodel, or what has gone into the home. And you try to anticipate market reaction for that. So for qualitative stuff, it can do it's more of a percentage kind of thing. So, this home is 20%, well, not 20%, this home is 5% better than the other home, or 10% better, and try to determine values or determine adjustment amounts that way. So I to be honest, I've only done one other of these Zoom sessions, so I will kind of leave it in your guys' court in terms of what you want to ask, kind of topics to address. I can kind of ramble on, so I don't want to ramble too much. So would you guys prefer I just kind of go over the list of questions I have that I was sent ahead of time, or do you kind of want to spitball, or what would you guys prefer?
I think a lot of the questions that you were sent, Kyle, are questions that the agents would ask anyway. So
Okay.
I would suggest going ahead and starting with those ones, because they're
Totally.
the most common ones that I get from the agents. And then, maybe it'll snowball from there. People come up with additional ones.
For sure. Okay, so right on top of the list here, how much value is given to bedrooms, i.e. when comparing a 3-bedroom to a 4-bedroom? And then the second question is about bathrooms. So a lot of my answers are going to be kind of frustrating because it really depends on what market you're in. So every home you look at, you determine its market area and determine neighborhood boundaries and all that stuff. So the Twin Cities has such a wide range of homes that it really depends what you're looking at in terms of how much to adjust for one thing or another. So if I'm looking at a $2 million house on Lake Minnetonka, my adjustments for bedrooms are going to be very different than a $200,000 house in Richfield or Bloomington or something like that. Your adjustments are always proportionate to the property you're looking at. So I kind of touched on paired sales analysis and for how we determine adjustments. Bedrooms would be a good example of that. And again, I know it gets into the kind of gray area because there's so much that goes into a home that it gets hard to parse out that kind of thing. But bedrooms and bathrooms would be a good use for paired sales analysis. So you look at what average homes, you take a group of homes that are 3 bedrooms versus 4 bedrooms, take a average sales price, figure out what that difference is between a 4-bedroom or 5-bedroom, things like that. So yeah, it kind of depends, but adjustment should always be proportionate to the home that you're working on. So I don't know if that answered that question. Do you have a list of prices for certain common things? Not really a list of prices. So it looks like Jennifer asked a question. Do you have a list of prices for certain common things? for example, how much a deck is worth. Again, that goes into price point of home, and kind of quality of home, and that kind of thing. So again, if I'm looking at $1 million home, my adjustment for a deck is likely going to be more than it would be if I was looking at a house in Bloomington or something like that, a $300,000 house. And yeah, does anybody want to ask more questions about that?
I would say, like, when we're meeting with homeowners, would it be a fair statement that almost any improvement that they put on the house, whether that be kitchen or a deck, you're not typically going to get dollar for dollar back on that, right? In an appraised value situation. So if I remodeled my kitchen for $50,000, it doesn't make my house necessarily $50,000 worth more than it was prior to the project starting.
Correct. A safe rule of thumb that I tell people is 50 cents on the dollar, and people get really upset about that because kitchens are very expensive, but I mean, any project can add up pretty quickly. But 50 cents on the dollar is a pretty safe safe bet. But again, there's so much that goes into it in terms of price point of home, location, where the home is located. If I'm in a not great neighborhood where there's not a lot of homes that have been remodeled, well, if I put in a $200,000 kitchen, your return on your investment on that is going to be quite a bit less than if you were doing it in, say, I don't know, the Morningside neighborhood or something like that.
So on that, I guess my question on that is, when we go there and we're going there for those appointments and they're asking us, I get that, 300,000 to $1 million different, right? But how do we know, like I've seen recently where a garage was only given, 4,000 extra instead of 10,000 extra. And so how do we best, because when we say to them, well, it depends, then, they're looking for us to get more of that answer. And,
right.
Obviously we're looking at the other comps and stuff and all that good stuff. But sometimes if there isn't another one, or they're wanting to do, like, finish a basement right now, yep. It's hard because from us, they're not taking it's gray area, so I think that's why I was asking, like, is there kind of a,
my
like
gray area answers are equally as frustrating for homeowners. So,
okay. All right.
And again, it's every appraisal is different. So, let's say your $4,000 adjustment for a garage. Hopefully whoever that appraiser was noted in the report. You could call and ask why you only made a $4,000 adjustment for garages. And that's one of the questions was, kind of communication with appraisers. I like when agents talk to me about stuff. I like when agents have questions and, like, give me a list of updates, that kind of thing, that homeowners have done. To be honest, on the garage side of things, ideally you find comparables that don't have, ideally you find comps that line up. So 3-car garage to 3-car garage, 2-car garage to 2-car garage, you know what I mean? That kind of thing. And then also law of diminishing returns applies to most adjustments. So, let's say somebody has a 3-car attached garage and then they built another 2-car detached garage. Well, law of diminishing returns applies. How much, when you start adding more and more, it's not necessarily, a clean number to be added on to it. You know what I mean? So,
so another one, kind of going back to improvements and things. So another one I often run into with clients is like, hey, it's great that you have a new siding, a new roof, and new windows. Those aren't going to add a whole lot of significant value to your home because people expect to have a roof on the house and siding on the house and windows on the house. But on the contrary, when the siding, windows, and roof are bad, the appraiser may make a negative adjustment for that. However, you don't get a positive adjustment for new. What would be an appraiser's way to explain that to a client?
So I generally don't. So I try to look at the overall condition of the property. So let's say they have brand new kitchen, bathroom, floors, everything inside is brand new, but their siding is, like, falling apart. You know what I mean? Like, things like that. you know, you try to reconcile how much, you know, what the overall condition of the property is and kind of what the cost would be to kind of bring it up to the level of the rest of the home. But generally kind of home maintenance items don't add a lot of value to houses. So, you know, siding, roof, windows, they're they're really, really expensive to replace. But unfortunately, you kind of hit the nail on the head that homeowners expect a certain level of, you know, homeowners expect it to be in certain condition when they go to buy a property.
Okay,
Yeah.
if you could cover what appraisers have to look for FHA in VA loans, we get this question a lot. I mean, obviously we know peeling paint and GFCI within, what is it, 6 feet from every water source, those
Yep.
things. But then there's also one, like, I'll be honest, I've been doing this a while, but the one that still confuses me is the handrail and the steps and how many steps down before a handrail is required.
So I'll be completely honest. I'm not on the VA panel, so I don't. I'm pretty sure you have to like murder somebody to get onto the VA panel. So I haven't. It's outrageously difficult to get on there. So I don't do VA stuff. I know a little bit about it. I know enough about it through continuing ed, that kind of thing. And generally, what they're looking for is safety issues. So, and same thing for conventional loans. There's a question about appraisers calling things out for conventional loans for repairs and that kind of thing. The only time I would ever call anything out is if it was a like glaring safety issue. So if there's like water, like if there's standing water in the basement, or you know, I'm trying to, you know, there's a hole in the wall, like a huge hole in the wall from the, you know, that you can see through to the outsider. I mean, so it has to be pretty, it has to be pretty significant for me to call something out.
For conventional, right?
For conventional, FHA is very nitpicky. So yeah, peeling paint they'll call out, but again, it kind of goes back to that safety safety issues for FHA. So the hand railing thing, I called out a property for a safety railing once because it was a two-story house. It was open to open to the living room, kind of like a loft, and they didn't have a railing on there. And it was like, well, some little kid can just, you know, run right off and hurt themselves, and like that's a pretty glaring safety issue. FHA stuff, peeling paint I think is the most common one that people get flagged for, and then safety railing stuff. I'll be honest, I don't know the exact off the top of my head, I don't know exactly how many steps until a safety railing is required, but safety railing is a big one. Peeling paint I think is the most common. CO detectors, you kind of listed most of them that they look for in FHA stuff. Let's see, what do we got? Emphasis on price per square foot. Somebody asked, how much emphasis do you put on price per square foot? To be honest, appraisers don't really use price per square foot, just because you're grouping kind of everything that's involved in a property into one number. An appraisal report kind of breaks down the home into certain areas. So, you know, your lot size, the condition, the quality, bedroom, bathroom count, square footage, that kind of stuff, garages, special features, that kind of thing. But price per square foot, it's an easy number to use, but it paints with an extremely broad brush. So I don't know any appraiser that uses price per square foot. I know agents use it fairly common, but I don't know any appraisers that use price per square foot. I heard somebody describe it as like trying to buy a car on price per pound. And I think that's a good example, because like, you know, a $5,000 Bentley is going to cost, it's just, there's so much that goes into a car, so much that goes into a house in terms of like condition, quality, all that kind of stuff, that is missed when using just price per square foot. So Below grade, how do we account for below grade square footage, or place value when it, on it, when technically they can't use any below grade square foot? So we do look at, below grade square footage. But it's compared to other below grade square footage. So we do take it into consideration on appraisals. So, let's say I've got a full walkout basement on a big old Rambler, versus a split entry with a tuck under garage or something that's losing a 2-car garage space. You would make adjustments for that, that square footage. You'd make adjustments for, basement finishing, bathrooms, that kind of thing, of the wet bars, that kind of stuff. Trying to think. Yeah, curious. Somebody asks, why do some appraisers call out repairs on conventional loans when they shouldn't be? Does anybody have I don't know, have a specific example?
Well, like I had one where an appraiser called out a broken window in a garage. And it was for a conventional loan, and I actually fought back and won, and we got it removed. But I'm seeing it more and more recently, actually, where I have agents call saying, hey, this got called out and it's a conventional loan. Why is the appraiser calling it out? I know you touched earlier on like major significant things. If you've got a hole the size of a 5-gallon bucket going from the exterior to the interior,
Right.
That's problematic. But when appraiser, recently, I know an appraiser on a conventional loan called out smoke detectors and CO2 detectors, which it was, I don't know if the agent is in the room there that happened to. It ended up being like closing was in a couple days, and it was just so much worth more the seller to just spend the $50 and get it done. But it costs everybody time, and then the money of those, and then the cost of the reinspect.
Right. So the broken window in the garage thing is one thing. Maybe I would say because it's unfinished area, he shouldn't be calling it out. COs, the CO detectors for a conventional loan, that honestly might have been from the lender. That might have been like, so we get a lot of kickback from underwriting and stuff. Appraisers we get a lot of blame for things that we call out. Oftentimes it's underwriting an underwriter who is particularly nitpicky will be like, hey, are there CO detectors? Can you, please take photos of all the CO detectors, when like appraisers can fight back, but at the same time, what's the, you know what I mean? So it may not have been on that appraiser, it may have been on underwriting. And that may have been who was kind of kicking up dirt about it. But
so what you're saying is the underwriter passed blame on the appraiser, and now the appraiser is passing blame on the underwriter.
all the time. But no, it honestly, it happens quite a bit. I get a lot of revision requests from underwriters over things that I'm like, why am I like very nitpicky stuff, where the underwriter could have said, told you guys, well, the appraiser is doing this, and it's yeah. So
And if I could just jump in here real quick,
Yes.
Cassie, it's a great question. And we have seen, and Kyle, I'm curious your experience, we have seen Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac push back a lot recently on health and safety issues that get called subject to. And I think that the origin of this is that Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac issued a lender letter in February of this year where they talked about critical repairs, and the phrasing they used was, quote, all life safety hazards. What is a life safety hazard, right? So the ambiguity in the guidelines does not necessarily serve anybody well. And there are a lot of things that are done even on conventional loans now that are all CYA material. Nicole Junker and we closed a loan with Nicole Junker that was conventional, I believe, and there was a big broken window above a couch in the living room. Last year, and Kyle, let me know what you think, but last year, I mean, even broken windows, it seems like a lot more things were flying last year. And now Fannie and Freddie have kind of gone a little bit more toward HUD's guidelines for FHA VA when it comes to health and safety.
That's super helpful, Colin, because I didn't know that was a recent thing. And it has been literally in like the last 60 days, I feel like we're getting all of this stuff called out on conventional that I've never seen before. So that's super helpful. Maybe if you could also post that verbiage that you just had in like the team Slack channel. So when we're meeting with clients, we can actually cite the source of that. And then also Jen has a question going back to the below grade square footage. So Jen, go ahead and take over.
Thanks. That is definitely helpful too on the conventional. Like, do we, how does that pertain to like as is properties that are selling as is, but have broken windows that now potentially could be called out? And now we've just said, oh, we could sell it as is. So I'd be curious just to watch it. In regards to the below grade, let's say there are no comps in a half mile, but one, they're both 2,000 square feet, but one, I'm seeing a lot recently that have only one bedroom upstairs, but the other three are below with full egress. Does that significantly impact? Like, I don't know how much sometimes to take off for that. I mean, I have the discussion of comparing the above grade and the below grade, but last year, same thing. That wasn't like, it wasn't a huge thing. And I feel like things that weren't big things last year are coming back into play. So I think we really just have to be really prepped going into these appointments.
So for personally, if I'm, which I've done a handful of, well, I've done a number of houses that were like ramblers like that, where they've got the master on the main floor and then the 3 other extra bedrooms are in the basement. I wouldn't say you would knock anything off for it. I mean, above grade is above grade is generally better, but no, if I'm comparing a 4-bedroom home to a 4-bedroom home, like I'm not too whipped up about where the bedrooms are, if they're in the basement or if they're on the main floor. I wouldn't be too worried about that.
Okay, good to know. Thanks.
And also good info from Colin there too. I was not aware of that. Generally for like safety stuff. So the broken window situation, I probably would have noted that in the report and just made a commentary about it. So at the time of inspection, a window in the living room was broken or something like that. And it's kind of up to the underwriters then if they want to like have kick it back as subject to and fix it. But yeah, I guess I wasn't aware of that either. So
one thing also that I'll mention, and Kyle, you can talk about how much this happens, but not all lenders will underwrite the appraisal as soon as it comes in. So the issue that you'll see, especially with some retail lenders, or even some smaller organizations or whatever it might be, is that they don't look at the collateral, the appraisal, until perhaps they do a full underwrite or further on in the process. So your loan officer might say, hey, great news, 365,000, well, actually they tell you at value, as is, we're good to go. Or they tell you, value is good, well, okay, and Kyle might have marked it as is, right? The appraiser marks it as is, but that doesn't necessarily mean that underwriting is okay with that, right? Because underwriting might be flipping through Kyle's file, his appraisal, and be like, well, wait a minute, I see there are notes here for a broken window. So even though it was marked as is by the appraiser, it doesn't necessarily mean that underwriting, to your point, Cassie, will not condition out stuff, right? And so that's the importance of appraisal comes in, I'd say our process, appraisal comes in, it's underwritten immediately, right? So that way we know whether repairs are, it's not a surprise, the week of closing where it's like, oh, guess what? Underwriting flagged this. Well, I thought you told me it was all good. Well, it was, but we didn't underwrite it for the past couple of weeks and now we've got to scramble. So just something to keep in mind when it comes to.
Colin,
yeah.
That's a great point that I would even take a step further. I had an agent friend of mine call me last week, very upset because they got a note from the loan officer that said appraisal's in, it's good as is. They went and told their client and the seller. And 4 days later came back and the appraisal was now $10,000 less. And the agent was like, what the hell just happened here? They told me, and I said, well, I always ask when a loan officer comes back to me and says the appraisal is in and at value, I always confirm before I tell any parties the transaction, has it been through underwriting? You want to know if it's been through underwriting before you're delivering that news to any of the parties, because that value can change. Maybe the appraiser missed something, underwriting's challenging something. So my best advice is anytime you are told the appraisal is in at value, confirm if it's been through underwriting before you deliver that news to any party.
So it's all underwriting's fault is what everybody
Yeah.
Okay, Kyle, I know you already said that you aren't VA certified. You know a little bit about through continuing ed, but maybe Colin wants to take on this one. We've talked about it before, but since we're on a complete appraisal phone call, who wants to discuss Tidewater?
Kyle, it's probably better for me if you're not doing VAs.
Yeah, I mean, I know a little bit. I know what it is. I can talk a little bit about it, but if you want to chat about it, I can interject with what my knowledge.
So, I mean, I'm a big fan of Tidewater, not that it works every time, but the best way to explain it, and Kyle, maybe we'll kind of bounce this back and forth, is that because this segues into value challenges and things of that nature. Tidewater is the only real loan product. And when we talk about Tidewater, it's VA. So VA appraisals, right? The VA appraiser will come out and say, hey, look, the purchase agreement says $300,000. I'm coming up with a valuation that is, $15,000, $20,000 short. But before that loan gets sent to the VA, the appraiser is able to ask a third party, which would be the agent, in most cases, say, hey, look, just a heads up, I'm not getting my value. Can you help me out with some comps? We had a real life example of this earlier this year where this happened. The agent sent 3 comps that she thought supported the value. And lo and behold, when the appraisal was finally submitted to VA, those were the 3 comps that the appraiser used to support that value. So it's an opportunity for agents or parties that are representing the veteran to submit information that supports value before it goes to the VA. And Kyle, I'll kick this over to you because that's different than other loans, right? You do an FHA appraisal, you do a conventional appraisal. It's really difficult for you to backtrack on value most of the time. Is that right?
Yeah. I do get reconsiderations of value occasionally. But the thing with Tidewater, if I'm understanding it correctly, is that it happens before you've actually, kind of submitted things. So the issue with reconsiderations of value is that, well, you've submitted your report with the best comps that you think. Now it happens. It does happen where an agent will come back and say, in a reconsideration, a non-Tidewater reconsideration of value, and say, well, what about these comps? And it does happen where, let's say, they didn't post to the MLS or something before they didn't post to the MLS before I submitted the report. So I wouldn't have never, because we can only use closed sales as comparables. Actives and pendings are supported, but you never really know what they're going to close at. So let's say they've closed and they haven't posted the MLS or whatever. So I missed them. They might be better. And, for reconsiderations of value, occasionally you have to use them. And, the issue is that you've already submitted your report. So you're going kind of back on what your number is and saying oh, I messed up because I didn't see this comparable. But again, it happens occasionally. Oftentimes for reconsiderations of value, the comps submitted aren't always good comps. But no, I agree. I wish there was a Tidewater thing for conventional loans as well. It would make the process easier. The last reconsideration of value I had was some very modest house in Egan, and the woman sent me some lakefront home that and you get things like that, and it's no, it's not a comp. But no, I wish there was a Tidewater dynamic to conventional loans, but
Cassie, is that kind of what we were looking for?
Yeah, I think that that's sufficient. Just, in a nutshell, it's basically if the appraiser is finding in his initial review process that he or she's probably not going to come in at value of where the appraiser is, it gives everybody else the opportunity to maybe provide with him or her with some things that they might be missing.
I will say on that, kind of on that note, kind of, I will occasionally reach out to agents, or I have reached out to agents in the past if, say, I'm working on a new construction, and it's new construction specifically because it's kind of all over the place if agents are actually going to post their list, the sales for the homes onto the MLS. So in the past, I have reached out to agents and say, hey, do you guys have any other comparables in this development that aren't listed on the MLS? Because if they're not on there, I'm not going to see them. And for new construction, it's pretty important to have, it's pretty important to have that information. So sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but that's yeah. If you're doing new construction, please post them on the MLS so I can see them.
Or off market.
Yeah, or off, but even if it's sold before print, or please put it on the MLS. Otherwise, I don't know anything about it and I can't use it, and the whole process crumbles.
So let me kind of bring this back to a full circle with what Colin opened up with on the very beginning of this call was, we as agents really can't have much communication with the appraiser. And this falls a lot back to the last market crash that we experienced and how much, anyhow, we don't need to go into all of that. But what is helpful for you as an appraiser then, since we can't have that initial communication? Is it helpful that before your appraisal, we leave a packet of information on the counter with what has been done to the house? What helps you as an appraiser that us as agents can do?
So personally, I like when agents leave me a list of updates that the homeowner has done. I love it. It's great. It's something to the more information, the better. I also don't mind when agents leave me a list of homes that they've used to price the home when they were listing it. I think that's very helpful. I think the rules about influencing an appraiser, like if you give me a list of comps, I don't take that as being influenced at all. I take that as that's information out there that I'm likely going to find anyways, but I think it's helpful. If I have an agent, I've never had it happen where they're like, you need to hit this number, you need to hit, that kind of thing. Like that's where the don't influence an appraiser comes into it. But like, if you just give me information, I think that's totally fine.
Which, believe it or not, agents, if you're newer, that happened all the time in 2008, 2009, 2010, 2012, which is why we have the rules in place that we have it. But also, is it helpful to know how many offers were on the property?
I think it is. It's, again, the more info, the better, is kind of my take on it. So, if I'm struggling to find comparables to, determine value that would support that sales price, because, what better indicator of market value than when two people come together and determine a sales price? Like, what better indicator of market value is that? If I'm struggling to, if I'm struggling to get there, it's good to know that, there's 4 offers, there's 10 offers on a house, and, it's outrageously competitive. Like, that's helpful to know. Yeah.
Perfect. So guys, I did enough talking and question asking. Who on Zoom or in the office would like to put Kyle on the hot seat? Someone's got to have something good. Anyone? I don't know, Holly, if you're there, if people are asking questions. I don't know, Kyle and Colin, if you can hear that.
Everyone's just staring at each other.
Everyone's just staring at each other. Okay. Well, if nobody has any questions, Kyle or Colin, is there any final words you want to leave us with besides good luck?
I like what Kyle just said, and he has Kyle, you've said for a long time, when you see a purchase agreement, your view of it is not, oh man, like that's super hot. I mean, you're not you are an objective third party, and your opinion is always that, okay, we have a purchase agreement. That means we have 2 private parties that have agreed upon a price, right? But can you talk about some of the fiduciary obligations that you might have, Cassie, you're talking about changes after the housing crash. there are liabilities that appraisers assume now that they did not assume 10 years ago, right, Kyle?
Yeah, I mean, I've got every appraiser has to carry liability insurance and all that fun stuff. And there's a whole lot of verbiage in my report about, CYA aspects of it. But yeah, it's the best thing you can do from the appraisal side of things is just be as accurate as possible in what you're doing and in disclosing issues that you might see. There's a obligation for me not to mislead my client. So kind of going back to if I'm trying to hide something and taking my photos or not noting them in the report, like that's something that can definitely come back and bite me. So that's if I see something at a house, I gotta disclose what it is. And yeah, it's never happened. I've never had any issues with that. But yeah, that's definitely something that you kind of got to look out for. I'm trying to think what else. There's a lot of appraisers out there who have been doing this a very long time, and are kind of loosey goosey with kind of the rules about things. So it's just like any field, there's good and bad appraisers. But there was one topic I wanted to kind of cover, since I've got the ear of a bunch of agents, is measuring homes and determining above grade and below grade square footage. I try to spread the good word of this every time I get a chance to talk to agents. Please, when you're listing things on the MLS, try to be accurate about what's below grade and what's above grade. It's a very convoluted process on my end if that stuff doesn't line up accurately. But that's really the only thing
Okay, do you want to give a definition of what that really is then? 'Cause
Yeah,
everybody doesn't understand. I mean, like
absolutely.
walkout.
So even if it's a walkout, there's a good chance you're below grade. So so how I describe it is, if I take a laser and I set it on the ground and I spin around, and if at any point I hit dirt, if in theory you're doing this, any point you hit dirt, you're below grade at any point. So oftentimes the biggest issue is where it's a 4-level split, where you've got the two, you'll have your entry level and then one below and then another one below. There's likely 2 levels that are below grade there. That's kind of the best way to describe it. So if you're looking around and at any point you would see dirt, if you're sitting on the ground, that would be considered below grade. So
That's a really helpful tip.
not really related to kind of what Colin had brought up, but something I feel like I need to bring up when I've got the ear of agents. But
We have one more question here.
yeah.
I know you don't do VA and FHA, but in regards to the peeling paint, like, is it just if it's peeling and like, hanging and dangerous, or if it's peeled at all? Because like right now I have one where it's peeled, but it's a clean peel, but it's a great house otherwise. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a danger. It's just older.
Right.
And then also like cracks in foundation, right? If they're, is there a difference for you guys settling crack versus like true crack that's causing seepage? Or is it just crack at all?
I think, how old is the house that you're talking about? Is it
1952.
1952. Okay. So, if I see a crack in a foundation in a house that was built in 2015 or something like that, that would be, cause for concern probably. And if I could tell if it's like settlement, that kind of thing. If it's just kind of, if there's minor foundation cracks in a house and it's 70 plus years old, there's a lot of houses in Minneapolis that are 100 plus years old. That kind of comes with the territory. So for FHA wise, peeling paint, if it is easy to cover up, it would probably be the easiest for you to just peel it off and do a quick like little coat of paint over it before the appraiser comes out. Because It would depend on the appraiser if they're going to call it or not, kind of how they interpret those rules.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
and again, unfortunately, it's frustrating that like it's up to each individual appraiser how they kind of interpret the situation, how you know, how severe it is. But if my advice would be, if it's easy to cover up with a quick coat of paint, I would just do that.
Do it. Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Also, I mean, I'll take that a step further, guys. If you have peeling paint and your client does it themselves or hires someone to scrape the paint and repaint, make sure the chips of paint aren't laying around. We learned that the hard way, and a homeowner, then the appraiser came back out, saw all the wood or the paint chips in the rock bed, and then required lead-based paint testing on them, which led to thousands of dollars. So just another helpful tip, like if you are scraping peeling paint to repaint, make sure that the paint chips aren't left around.
Would that only apply to a house that was built before 78 then, or what if the house was in the 80s and with the case?
Did you hear that?
No,
So what, would that only apply to a house that was built before 78?
no. Well, I guess.
I think I don't have the rule in front of me, but I actually think that is some. I don't know the exact date, but I thought that wasn't the case. That peeling paint was. Oh no, that's just for lead. Concerns about lead, I think.
Right, but they'll call out peeling paint even on a home built after that, even though the whole basis of this rule is so that we don't ingest lead-based paint and die from it. And the
Right.
house could have been built in 2002, so lead-based paint is no longer an issue, but it would still apply.
Perfect sense. Makes perfect sense.
Hey,
There's still that in here.
are they just chit-chatting, Holly, or do we have another question?
We're good.
All right, well, Kyle, thanks so much, man. I mean, we'll have to do this again. I think that we covered a lot of ground, and you can go down a lot of rabbit holes with appraisals, but I always laugh. I've wanted to do this for a while, and it's kind of like when you see your second grade teacher outside of class. It's like, oh, we can talk about something, So yeah, I love that. I love your style. I love the open dialogue. And again, if you guys have questions relating to appraisals, or let's say you need a private appraisal done, Kyle, you do private appraisals, right?
I do. And again, if you guys got questions, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to answer questions the best that I can. Like I said, I like when agents communicate with me. My job would be very lonely and boring if I didn't get to talk with agents or homeowners. So it doesn't bother me at all when agents provide information. But no, I appreciate it. Hopefully my answers weren't too convoluted or vague. I tried to, unfortunately with appraisals, it can get a bit,
Baggish.
vague-ish and specific to a particular property. So, unfortunately, yeah, I hopefully I answered your questions the best that I could. But
Thank you.
Hey,
Thank you.
Kyle, if we have agents who have questions, is the best way like email, text?
probably email. It just I'll be able to get back to them quickest there. I don't usually I try not to answer my phone when I'm out on inspections and stuff. So yeah, probably email would be easiest.
Thank you.
Cool. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate the invite.
Thanks,
Thank
Kyle.
you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks guys. Have a good one.